Hey everyone, welcome to the first edition of WOL Talk. Today we're going to be sitting down with a few members from the Warriors of Light staff and some of our participants. And we're going to just talk today about a few of our experiences we've had, some things that we're thinking about, and I hope you're as excited about it as I am. First, I'm going to introduce one of our longtime players. You know him, you love him, Logan Dean. How you doing?
Doing good. Happy to be here.
Also, I'd like to bring on board another one of our longtime players and one of my longtime good friends, Matthew Staley.
How you doing? Good to be here. Thanks.
And then everybody knows our game master, the Grand Marshal, my brother, Clayton McDowell.
What's going on, Joe? It's a secret. You too, buddy.
All right. I just got a couple of questions that we're going to go through. The first one being newbie moments. Now, you guys were there for our very first event. So why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about your first experiences at the LARP? Like what you thought when you came in, what you experienced, just what was running through your head at that moment, if you could tell me.
Well, this is your very first LARP. Probably you go first.
Okay, so this was my first LARP, and I had no expectations coming in. I didn't even know what LARP was, more than a week before this started. I didn't know what LARPing even was. I haven't even heard of it. So coming in, zero expectations, and I came in planning to have fun. I just wanted to have a good time and a new experience and try something. And I was pretty blown away. I had much more than I ever expected, to be honest. It was of course fun, but it was... it brought out a new side of me that was kind of hiding there all along. So for me, it was really interesting because I'm coming in to have fun at this thing, and come to find out, I'm really bringing out a piece of myself.
Yeah, and it's really cool. Because I seen that, especially in the beginning when you came in and you just had you didn't know what you were. You're just kind of like, I'm not really sure. And
waiting for someone to bite.
Yeah, and by day two, you were...
Oh, I had that look on his face like, man, am I going to like this? What am I doing here? What the heck am I thinking, man?
Right. Yeah.
Well, one thing that was really funny, I remember, is, we were having the first LARP event, and I was trying to get him on board. I'm like, Logan, you should come out to this thing, it'll be fun and whatnot. And he really didn't commit until about a week prior. And then once he did, he was just all about it. He was like, you know what? And you told me later on, I think you said something to the effect of, if I'm going to do this, it's going to be 100%. I'm just going to commit to it totally. And you certainly did.
Yeah, by far.
Cool.
By far.
I mean, you've been there every day of every event, straight through. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's just funny, especially what we had with just a small group that we did have. And it was kind of nice in a way for the fact of where we could take it because, when you have a small group like that, you can really focus on the story, and it was actually better for it to start that way for the fact that everybody, we could build this awesome story without too much management, and it really set the precedent for the world and for what was going on, and that was one of my best things about it, of having you guys, because with the guys that we did have, they were so committed to their characters and to the story that it just allowed it to flourish and develop so well.
And Matt, what were your thoughts? You've been to other LARPs before.
Yeah, I've been to at least one other LARP before this one. It was a new experience. Definitely, totally different. It was a lot of fun. I like the fact that I was able to kind of do really what I wanted.
Right.
And really experience the world, and the world felt really rich. You guys did a great job of bringing it to life and helping it go. And man, we struggled. it was a good fight. It was a good uphill startup.
You say the world felt rich. What was interesting coming in is it felt like there was already a world existing there.
That's what I mean.
And it's like you're just walking into a world. So it wasn't like we're walking in and creating a new world. It felt like here's a world that exists.
You just landed.
Walking in.
That's what I mean. Yeah, it felt like we just got off the ship, walked in, like, oh boy, here we go.
And on that topic too, Matt, we've actually been to a couple different events as players before, and just seeing stuff that we wanted it to be and everything. So because of those experiences, I think we knew what to flesh out and be like, okay, what do we want? We don't want just a combat scenario to where everybody's just coming in and beating each other with swords. Like we want that's the best thing as creators that we could hear is there was already a world existent. It wasn't like, yeah, if I thought really hard, no,
Absolutely.
it was there.
You know, and one thing about it is there's a certain level of balance that has to be achieved. And, you know, we tried our darndest, which was to have a world that's already, it feels like it's already out there and available for you to explore, and that there's a history here, you know what I mean, that you're becoming a part of. But also to have a certain level of, you know, where did you come from? Where did you come from?
Yeah, that was
and
fun.
bring that along with your character into this brand new experience. You know, so that kind of thing.
Yeah, and yeah, it's good, and I'm really looking forward to what you guys' experience later too in that.
Yeah, I think there was maybe 4 or 5 of us at the beginning,
Oh my gosh.
and so at the beginning was like,
it was
how can we? The reason why I think we ended up being such a tight group
there's only
is 'cause
3 of us
we
for a good
had to-
portion of it, and then occasionally 4 to 5.
We were built on such few players where if we didn't, it was like we
Dead.
would have been screwed.
I
But
mean,
but
how many times we were on our back? Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Yeah.
Fight after fight that we were just put down.
Yeah.
Goblins.
Oh,
like,
yeah,
goblins.
Oh, yeah, this is goblins. Yeah, we'll get him. Run away.
yeah, we're doing a fight. It's goblins. Logan's down.
Yeah.
I guess that's gonna be.
Goblin was what I was down by most out of everything in the and it was just simply because of us being such few and the nature of goblins. But
Yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely a different environment, having just a few players. It made the world, I think, feel a little bit more dangerous.
Oh, definitely.
And
it
where
was
you really had to
a lot.
rely on the strengths of the person to your right and your left, because that may be all you have at best for the most of it.
We really had to trust each other. It was rough.
Yeah.
But it was good. It was really, really good, though. I mean, and there were things that we pulled off that we shouldn't have been able to pull off. I mean, I think back to our fight with the elementals.
yeah,
Oh my!
You shouldn't have won that
Level
fight.
ones.
I'm
That was
just
so
gonna say
awesome.
you shouldn't have made that fight happen.
thinking back,
I'm so glad you had planes as a knowledge, because otherwise that would have never have worked.
Yeah.
Oh,
It was
great.
it was gonna be endless. And
It was literally this close to failure, an inch away from
Yeah.
failure. That
Yeah.
whole thing.
Well, let's see. You took 2 of my HP down. You took me from 3 HP down to 1, and you just barely touched me as a fire elemental before I slid across that room.
Yeah, well, I
and
didn't
broke
get
it.
you with that last hit where that was it.
It's like,
and
you just touched me once and took out most of my HP.
yeah.
It was literally, I think it was the highest level mod that one of the highest level mods
was,
that existed in the world at that time. And, I mean, even the trap.
Oh
like,
my God.
at the end, like, you didn't get
Everybody.
Yeah,
Down.
they got lucky enough to get through there, shut down the portal, so there was no more elementals spawning, which it was endless until they shut it down. And elementals are like 4 levels higher than them.
Oh, it's
they got
nuts.
past it. Matt shut them down. They got through the next room, and there was a chest with a trap so high that Logan, he was their only thief at the time, wasn't even able to detect it. It went off, did 10 HP to everybody. Everybody went unconscious. Like
And there was a lot of rough stuff that happened early on. Like you said, I mean, those monsters were blue, and at the time, nobody really wanted to deal with blue.
No,
so
it
it
was
was just
scary.
by the skin of their teeth.
Terrifying.
That's the thing is, you guys left so many options available to win, more than just straight combat to combat. Because when it's
Yeah,
just
it was-
straight combat to combat, you kind of walk in knowing who's going to win.
Yeah.
But the fact that if you can, really strategize and use your head, and you guys leave
puzzle.
other options to win, and just like the knowledges that we can have, and they can come into play in ways where it's like, it's not just combat to combat, which adds another element of richness to the world,
Yeah. Actually, if we can take a quick segue, we've got a video we want you to watch.
Cool.
And then we'll go ahead and talk about that afterwards.
Okay.
Sweet.
So this is a prime example of the small group we had, and we barely walk out of this thing alive, and we go into this cave, and at this point, what have we fought? Fought a couple goblins before this, maybe a mole. So we walk in, there's this
I
big,
can't even think of what we fought prior to that. I mean,
big two-headed creature, and we're all just level 1s.
Oh, yeah.
And we walk in this cave, and here's this two-headed monster in there. And this is just a small example of what we went through as a small group.
oh my heck, that thing one-shots me.
yeah.
One-shots me. I get 3 shots off, and I get 1 shot in. Down.
Yeah.
For those watching, the color system changed too. So green isn't the lowest level anymore. It used to be a lot higher.
Yeah, and the reach on it.
Oh,
Reach on it. I got those little daggers in there, and this thing's got a reach of 2, more than 2 humans.
Yeah, it was swinging 2 great weapons around, so it wasn't like you could just get in there quickly either.
Yeah, it was. For sure. It was like that moment, like when you come up behind me there, and I knew you were going to come once we go through the door, and all of a sudden I hear, and I feel fracking. I was ready, so boom, too massive, and that put you down to 1. So that shows where he really was at. He was at 3 HP to 1, and we weren't sure. Actually, me and Kyle talked about it. Actually, as we're standing there, before the fight, and we're thinking, is this going to be a TPK? Like, is that going to be that moment? Because this is a pretty tough monster. It's no joke compared to it's throwing half or more of everybody's HP with every swing.
Yeah, it was rough.
And one of the complaints I've heard, well, not so much as a complaint as more of a strategic grumble, is the backswing on anything that's big like that. Is that darn backswing?
Yeah, especially when you got a dagger this long.
No.
Yeah, especially when you got a dagger this long.
Yeah.
Well, what's interesting is your character levels up, but in a way you also level up as you learn.
Yeah.
Now if I were to fight that thing, there's no way I'm going to fight it the same way I did when I first went in there. So it's interesting in that regard.
Your guys' strategy
knock an
alone.
arrow. Like I knock them a lot faster now.
Yeah, for sure. And I notice nowadays, like just the strategy, like you're saying, the strategy between you two. I noticed that you wait for your shots a lot more, rather than just being like trying to run the damage out there in the air.
No.
It's like I'm more effective, calling these shots, finding my spot, and you're waiting for somebody else to come in there, and there's more bodies to be in there, so you can get.
Well, I think at first he was trying to brawl a bit more, where
that's true.
He came to learn that the assassin, he just runs in there nowadays and just plop, and then he's gone. Where did he go?
Flash.
Where did he come from? Where did he go?
I spent a lot of time on the ground in the beginning. I spent a lot of time on the ground.
You weren't the only one.
You and me both.
That's for sure.
All right, well, we got another moment to look at, and this is from the early days, too, so it's also kind of rough, and it's very personal to what happened with your character as well.
Come close for your freedom. Remove you from your curse. If you can survive.
So what you just saw there was Ladacroft, Logan's character, having the curse of lycanthropy removed from him. So that's essentially what that showed there is they had went to this powerful elder dragon, and he was able to remove that curse from Ladacroft, separating the werewolf from himself, and then turning that werewolf on them, so they had to fight.
Okay, yeah.
And as you can see there, he about ended the 3 of them that had went out there to cure Ladacroft.
Yeah, that was intense.
Yeah. I felt back 'cause the first thing I said is, I knew it. First thing out of my mouth, I knew it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was crazy. I still can't believe you threw down your daggers.
Well, you'll notice in the video, I didn't have my daggers. We were at our wits' end. So I got lycanthropy. And what we had to do to get rid of that, I gave up. Only you and Gyros were the only, you guys were the only reason why I didn't give up. I said, just let me become a werewolf and let me go, kill me, whatever. Because it was so, the situation was, excuse me for the pun, but dire. And so I had zero HP, so I was in the slowed condition, so I threw my daggers on. I said, whatever happens in this dragon lair, I don't care. This is it, And so, I'm never going to do that. I obviously didn't do that again. I had my daggers going forward.
Disarming.
Yeah.
I know it. Just watching you guys, and then for one thing, I think it was kind of a moment in immersion to where your relationships, like not just emotionally, because you were exhausted. So so was Gyros. He was more of like let's get this done, and then yours was much more in a state of like right at the end of the video there, you ran after the stinking werewolf. You're like, I'm not going to let this thing...
Yeah, that was another crazy
by the
moment.
way.
Yeah, that was a crazy moment because I think we ran a good half mile. After that whole big brawl there, then next thing you know, we just boogie out, and I'm like, I'm getting away as the werewolf. They're letting me go, and next thing you know, I turn around, come back here, you foul creature! And there he is, chasing right behind me.
1 HP, I think I have at this entire time.
And it was pretty much just an endurance contest at that point, and he ended up catching up, and he slew the werewolf.
The archer did it with his 1 HP or 1 damage sword.
1 damage sword with 1 HP.
And then I remember actually when the moment you actually contracted lycanthropy, which was kind of funny in my mind. I came into the inn as a man who's kind of like kind of wild-eyed, and he's not sure what's going on, and he came in and he just starts like drinking from everybody's cups, and I'm like, don't be sick, and I'm just down in this water and acting like I'm just wild, and Lad comes over to me and he comes over next to me. He's like, are you okay, sir? Like being totally compassionate. And he grabs me and I grab his arm, and I was just going to RP that biting him, but I totally put my teeth right on his arm. And I was like, and it like really bit him. And I'm like, but I just kept it up, rolled out of the outside the thing. I'm like, I'm going to have to catch him later and apologize out of game because I legitimately bit Logan right there pretty good.
Well, the look on your face is amazing, by the way. You're just like nearly screamed when it happened. You're just like, and jumped back, and you were gone. You were just like, as fast as you were in. Because I remember I was at the door, you flew in, you were going, like you said, you're ravaging the cups. You walk over, practically sit down, you attack him, and you're out just as fast. But you knocked me over on the way out the door. I'm like, what the heck just happened?
Yeah, what was that?
Like, everybody was just like confused so bad. It was great.
I think Lad had a bit of naiveness early on that eventually went away, where you actually learn, as you're like becoming in the world, you're actually learning the world as well, which and speaking of the lycanthropy, one thing that was really tough for me as Lad was that I lost complete control of my character. I almost killed you.
Oh my gosh.
I almost killed everybody. I almost TPK'd as besides myself. I could just imagine coming back.
Oh, that was great.
I turned into the werewolf. I knocked you down. I started attacking Caleb. That was really hard.
You took me out. You didn't knock me down. You took me out. Because I had my hand on your shoulder on the way when we were walking back when you first changed.
Yeah.
And I remember this
hilarious.
because this was terrible. Because I'm walking and they call GameStop, and I could feel as I have to hold my arm here while they remove you and slide in Kyle as the werewolf. As I'm feeling my hands on my foot going. I
remember that moment.
Look at my face. I can feel it. As my eyes roll back, my fist goes no.
Oh man!
And then next thing you know, and I'm on the ground. And then you're. Was it right away that you started figuring me, or was
pretty
it?
much? Yeah.
You got up to what, 8?
I think so.
Well, but I'm, as the GM, I'm switching you on. I'm trying not to laugh because man's just going like I see him like he's got his eyes closed and he's kind of just doing this. Nope. and
it was
switch him out.
hilarious.
And then when he starts coup de grace him, the other players at the time almost didn't know what to do. They're kind of like,
Yeah, I don't
Like,
want
do
to
we
fight
stop
this
this?
thing,
This
but
is
I don't
what,
want him to die at the same
Yeah.
time.
This is
and it was one of
Lancrod.
those creatures that, as you saw in that video just a moment ago, I mean, it wasn't something to be trifled with at that point in time.
it was.
So it was.
They weren't no joke. A creature that's fast. If a creature fast with decent amount of damage especially back then, is nothing to be trifled with.
No.
No.
Yeah.
When you only got
It's a
a
nightmare.
couple HP.
Yeah. And that was a big part of it too. Is and a big part of every LARP, I think, is the development of relationships between characters. You know what I mean? Because you may be friends outside of the game, right?
Right.
But in the game, you could be the worst of enemies, or vice versa, whatever the case is. And could you guys tell us a little bit about just sort of how your relationships as far as characters developed? Especially yours together, and maybe even some with some of the other players that have attended, and how those relationships sort of developed, and maybe in a good way, maybe in a bad way.
Right.
How some of that stuff kind of shook out.
I don't know how it was for you, but I found that we kind of like put together like hog pieces because we were both lone wolves when we first came in the world. I mean, we really were both lone wolves. Like we're kind of. My character was looking to prove himself in the world and try to make up for the legacy that had generated for my character.
Mm-hmm.
And then I loved Vlad's character because Vlad's character came in with nothing. He was like literally running from his past, but he was but he wouldn't trust anybody. And for some reason, him and I just clicked. And actually back then, you and I really didn't know each other outside the LARP. I mean, you were just getting to know each other at that point. But you and I just kind of like clicked, and we would just work together most of the time. Caleb came in there, and it was just really became the three amigos. That's really how it worked.
Yeah.
It was strange because it just felt like natural. I don't even know how to describe it other than that. It just felt like we just kind of slid in and worked together. What do you think? I mean,
One thing that Gyros said during the LARP was you find out the truth about somebody on the battlefield. And so what happened is we all started off kind of not trusting each other and separate, but we had to save each other so many times that by default we had to trust each other. Why would you save me continuously if you weren't there for me?
right.
And that built a relationship. And honestly, those relationships that we built are so deep that like even outside of LARP they feel real. Like I have an actual relationship with our tomb. Lad has a relationship with our tomb that exists.
So true.
Like in my mind, you're like, it's only for a few events on a few weekends, but for
It feels
what
like a
we
lifetime.
accomplished, it feels like a lifetime.
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. And
So true.
yeah, especially at the beginning, so the three of us really built that strong foundation there.
Yeah.
And then and like you said, we were kind of the yin to yang for everybody.
Yeah, we all. Well, I don't know. I've said this before, and it's kind of cliche, but we were kind of like the Triforce to each other. We all balance each other one way or another, and it's crazy. I mean, you're definitely our courage. Caleb is definitely our power, and for whatever reason, I'm being our wisdom because I keep you two level-headed, and you guys keep us alive. I mean, it's fun. It's been a good time.
Well, another interesting thing and just about like your characters, because you originally you had a prejudice against elves in a way, and to the point of like our tomb is half elf, Gyros is full elf, and here you are running with a 2/3 elf camaraderie. I'm not sure that's how it works. Whatever so here you are. He's got he's already got this baseline thing down, and you even made some snide comments to these guys in the beginning. So it was already like, I don't want to go anywhere with you guys, and then it turned in, and there was actually a moment in these later events. Actually, I think you said it the last time actually Gyros and Lad seen each other when Gyros was leaving that campfire in the November event. And you said, you guys were saying goodbye. And there was a moment in there I was listening where you said, I had an opinion about elves, and you changed that. And that was, and there was actually so much emotion in there because it had been going so long, and they became such good friends, out of that it was just like, from a character to develop from a hatred to, just a situation of trust and how Gyros actually healed that in you in a way, and not only that, but there was a bunch of things that, out of Gyros that you changed. And there was so many cool moments in that, just realness, And that's what I love about what you guys made out of the LARP, is it's not about just a bunch of sword swinging around. There was so many good moments in it, better than any movie.
And
it was just real.
And I think most, if not all, of our players have had really good moments like that. And the funny thing is I haven't been to our events as a player. I've only been to our events as a staff member, being NPCs and whatnot. And I've even had one of my characters influenced by the characters. Actually, pretty much all of them. But I remember just one moment in specific was my character Warren kind of would take things for granted, not really kind of stop and smell the roses, and he ended up talking to Xylia. And she's basically going into this whole thing about how, you really need to look at the beauty of things and this and that. And, our two characters really had a good conversation there for a while. And then after I was kind of hanging up Warren for, that period of time, I was thinking, you know what? She just totally changed my character's outlook on the world. And he's an NPC, you know what I mean? It's just, and so those kinds of things are really, really awesome.
Yeah, well, it's, as for staff, like, speaking of those watching, especially, like, if you're a player at an event, a lot of times, even though we're there as staff to try to give you the best experience, you guys are also giving us experience. So, like Sir Roland, me and Logan have talked prior about how, you're talking about, because I don't know if any of you know, but Ladacroft is retiring. He's going to be retiring his character. And he was talking about how he's going to miss those relationships and miss those camaraderies. And me, as playing Sir Roland, I started thinking about that, and I'm going to miss Ladacroft. And I was actually thinking about that. I'm like, man, that relationship that developed, it's almost like you are moving away. You know what I mean? In a way, and because I remember there was a moment after some things happened with Lady Ellen and everything like that, where Sir Roland was a broken man, and in the beginning, he was the courage that kept bringing it to them. And there's actually a moment to where Ladacroft and Gyros and, actually became his strength for a little while, because he became a broken man. And there was a moment I actually cried in character emotionally because of that relationship. It was good.
If it makes you feel better, I can honestly say I cried out of character. at the thought of those relationships going away. That's how real they felt.
Yeah.
That's how real those relationships are to me.
Yeah.
And it blows my mind because that's never what I expected.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Good stuff.
Now, why don't we go ahead and talk a little bit about, it's sort of in the same vein of relationships between characters, but more about maybe the story. How did your characters, how do you think they fell in as far as the overarching plot, of the last 2 years and sort of the story arc of how things went? How do you think that affected your characters and relationships with the other characters is the way that your character kind of fell into the story and what role they had to play and how they stuck out in that sort of an aspect? I know that you were actually helping us staff for,
at that point,
for a good portion of it, and your character kind of came back into the end portion of it. But if you could just elaborate a little bit on how that kind of shook out for you.
You want to start or should I start?
I'll start. So when I first came in, my character was someone whose parents were killed by elves. Was kind of a lone wolf, but just kind of by default. More of a survivalist. I was the assassin class, but my character was a survivalist, not really a fighter. Kind of had to become one, but... and I came in that way. And my character actually, over time, ended up developing into a leader role, which was a lot of the, like you said, the courage side of it and the passion side of it. And my character really realized that there was potential in Merdania, in the world. So my character saw this as like his last stand. This world was his last stand, last place to go, So my character then really cared about the world and cared about the people in it. And along the way, so many things happened, and my character ended up building trust within people because there were people there that were like him, and at the same time, there were people there that had the same reasons not to trust, and which made him realize, like, okay, there's people here that have gone through the same trials and have come out of it.
Yeah.
And along the way, gosh, there were so many things that happened. It's hard to even.
It does, every event doesn't feel like it's been, 2.5 days. It feels like it's been
A lifetime at least. Yeah, it's crazy.
But I would say overall, my character did end up developing into a leadership role that was there for the courage piece of it.
for sure. Well,
for sure.
As a GM, I pay a lot of attention, on what's going on. It's my job. If I don't know what's going on, then something's wrong. But I think out of anybody, I think Ladecroft had probably the most weight on his shoulders there on some of the decisions you had to make, because you got through, like you said, you ended up in that leadership role, but Ladecroft never chose that, to the point of almost opposing it, just almost like he despised it.
Yeah.
Yet it just fell upon him, and he still carried it. And there were some things that you did. Some of you know, some of you don't. With making conversations with Anselmo and deals and different things like that. You were weighing out those decisions on your own. And you were doing your best to keep everybody else from being even involved in the consequence. But yet, it's like we need to get this done. And you had the view of, I need to do this. No longer for myself,
Yeah.
And at that point, that's when I seen that big transition from Ladecroft being a survivalist and how do I survive to these people matter to me and I need to keep them alive. And once that transition hit, it was such an interesting dynamic. From a stressful from the Ladecroft of I need to live and I need to be the one to. I got this weight on my shoulders. I'm trying to keep you all alive. To that calm, in a sense, real leader. Where he became that strength.
Yeah, I think two things that really stood him out as a character were and made him that leader were the facts that he, out of anybody, you could say who's passionate about what's happening.
Yeah, by far.
That guy over there crying behind the rock. I mean, you weren't doing anything like that, but the guy who was obviously irritated and angry at these people that they're opposing, but also kind of broken inside about what was happening, these travesties and things like that. So I think that was one thing, is the passion that was just apparent to everybody. And then also you proved yourself to be overwhelmingly trustworthy. To where it's these are my goals, this is my intention, and you can jump on with me and we'll try to see this thing through. So I think that's what just immediately kind of shoved him right up there as, well, he's kind of a pinnacle, leader within our group.
So true.
Yeah, there was even a moment there where, going back to the point when you made the deal, for the fact that you came into a position to where people trusted your judgment so much.
I didn't even trust my judgment at times.
I can totally see that, but they didn't, and it was actually kind of got me choked up at one point, because I'm he is totally questioning his everything about this decision, but they aren't.
Right.
You know what I mean?
He feels he's flying blind, but they feel like they've got their firm direction.
They're he might be, he's shaking hands with the devil right now, but I trust him, and almost to the point of I think there's so many characters that would have laid down their life for you because they believed in the cause you were fighting for.
That's true. That's one thing I realized is when that happened, and I saw that happen, where his decision was just this is up to us. Mordania there's a lot of things happening with Lord Maxis and everything else, and it was it came from I'm just kind of existing in the world to being that person to becoming we are here to save, in a way, save this land and influence this land in a positive way, which it did put the weight on, because it was I never intended for this. It was supposed to be, I'm supposed to come here as a place to live and survive, and it turned into, if you want to survive here, well, then you got to do something.
You got to defend your home. That's what it came to. Yeah.
And that whole role, that's the cool thing about this world, and what it became is for the fact that we as the GM, as staff, and everything like that. I never planned for Ladecroft to become the leader. It wasn't in the plan. It's what happened. It's what developed, and all of that. So because it's a living, breathing thing.
Yeah,
and
that's cool.
beautiful.
That's
when
the
it takes on the
beautiful
life
thing.
of its own, and it goes out of your hands as anybody who's running the game.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, well, they're taking the front place on the stage of what's happening here, and
I put my notes and my director's wand down and go. I'm in the crowd now. For you guys, that's the cool moments.
And like you said, we get an experience out of this, by participating with you guys as far as, being NPCs and just getting to witness how this thing develops, through how you guys take it in which directions and whatnot. And we don't get paid for this. We do this simply because of the experience of, being a part of this thing because it's darn near awesome and we're pretty much addicted to it. But let's go ahead and fast forward a little bit. We've talked a lot about how we had like this small core group of players that, against all odds managed to somehow survive. And then and then
Close. Very close.
Yep.
How many times? 3, 5, 10?
Every fight.
So nowadays the culture is a little bit different, as it will be with more people, new faces and things like that, because we exploded quite quickly. As far as our player base, just it more than tripled. From our original attendee size. So could you guys tell me a little bit about what your thoughts are as far as how it's kind of shaking out nowadays? Now that we actually have an economy, we actually have people there that weren't there at the beginning. They're kind of coming in later, maybe to part of the story, to the world, things like that. How your relationships with them have been, where it's almost like you have your core group of people you trust, and then all of a sudden here are all these new people, and what was that experience like for you guys?
Well, it was a little weird for me because I, early on, ended up winning staff, as you all know. So I got to see most of the new players as staff. And that was pretty cool because these guys would interact with characters I would just make on the fly and would help me bring them to life. And it was really cool to watch, and just watch their bonds build. It was pretty impressive. And then later on, at the end, when I actually got a chance to come back, it was strange for me because I felt almost alien as the character that started in the world coming back in. I felt right coming back in because I felt like I was finishing business that I had started and walked away from. At the same time, just walking in, just like, I feel like the outsider. This is pretty crazy. It was a different dynamic. It was pretty cool. I mean, what was it like for you? It must have been totally different.
One thing that was a lot different was it went from trying to figure out weird ways to make it through stuff because we didn't have a lot of diversity to having a ton of diversity. You got Flint, Moon, Xylia, bringing her side. Xylia is a character that is about the nature and the animals, and thank goodness, because when the Druids came along, that week we got allies from the Druids, NPC allied from the Druids because of Xylia's connection to the world. Just so many things, so many different people. Brett's character Damien with his engineering piece comes in, so that diversity there made the world so much more rich in that way, because we only experienced it as a scout, an assassin, and arms master, and now we got people that have these new abilities I didn't even know of.
The opportunities, it became so much more open.
It opened the world up. It really made me go, there's more to this world than I even realized. And as far as trust goes and everything else, it was kind of coming in as like, who do we trust, who do we not trust? And again, Gyros brings up the point is it all gets figured out in the battlefield of who you trust and don't. And, that kind of brings up the point of Kakashi. Kakashi, a character, first death in the game.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That made for a very emotional event. I think that event stands alone as far as being one of the most emotionally charged events that we've had so far. And actually, I'm going to throw a curveball in right now, and we've got a video. Actually, we'll segue to
this one.
Yep. Let's go ahead and get that away.
Right.
Kairos, we have visitor, Lydia.
How are you, my friend? Good. I'm here to destroy it. Destroy it? Destroy it.
Here and now to be done with it.
We protected to the night. We've had more undead come through here than I would count.
We've had many spies trying to find its location. I fear if it wasn't with you, its location would have been found out.
We had someone speak something of a heartbeat. We destroy it.
Makes sense. It is designed to be the heart of each. Why are you opening that here? Lady Elowen. Lady Elowen, put it down, please.
It's here.
Put it down!
Voice radius immobilized. Item effect.
As you all feel that their icy, cold, skeletal hands reaching up from the ground put you in place.
Release these hands from me now. Come within this perimeter, you shall die. You Lady Elowen, what is going on?
You were fools.
The hourglass.
I knew this would happen. Sir Roland, I warned you of this.
So Roland, the brave, the stout is going on.
Finally,
He's led you all to ruin. He's led you all to ruin. Oh my. I thought you wished the best for them, yes?
Look at the mighty paladin.
Mighty Paladin. Oh, here's my throat, Mighty Paladin.
No more take orders from this lot. We will see who's the better. Release these. What are you?
You look surprised, Sir Roland.
I'm not.
You didn't see it? You have great vision on the battlefield, young one. You didn't see what was right in front of you the whole time. I must say you all are heroes. Thank you. Thank you. But your heroism is definitely surpassed by your stupidity. You fools! With this hourglass unrolled, the beating heart of the new world appears. The beating heart of the true Lord, Lord Maxis. Shadow Coven has infiltrated your little hands of Tephra for years. I'm sorry, Sir Roland, but you could just never join us. And so now, all of you. Did you know? Maybe you should have went in with that intuition. Well, we could use more like you in the Shadow Coven, in the new world. Why don't you set aside your stupidity and join us now?
Skill and weakness. See what?
Do you wish to join us?
Voices of the serpent. We could make use of it.
Yes. The others.
Well, we will see victory again.
I mean, you can at least slay a vampire. That's something.
Take it a little for once. Yeah.
How about you, Lord Gyros?
Oh, that's over.
Oh, he's still got some fight, doesn't he?
Fine, if none of you wish to join, we'll rule the world on our own. Fading in the shadows.
We'll find out! I will find you! Sever from your shoulders. I'll just rise again! Take his head.
So what you just watched there was the biggest betrayal that's ever happened in Warriors of Light. It was Lady Elowen betraying all the player characters. Now, they had worked days, actually events long, to try and recover an artifact. And they were promised that this artifact would be used by Lady Elowen to, basically keep it out of the evil force's hands, right? So it was to be used for good, it was to be taken away and all this stuff because it's a very evil, ancient artifact. And what actually happened was Lady Elowen turned it against them and revealed her true nature, which was in service to Lord Maxis, which he's a very bad guy. So he ended up becoming sort of the ultimate enemy, and she was the grand betrayer for him. So they got to experience firsthand betrayal on a grand scale as far as a character. They were working alongside to, achieve a common goal, and then next thing you know, she uses it right against them. And how did that make you feel?
Well, unfortunately, this time I was staff.
Yeah, we can see
It was crazy.
Yeah, you were in there.
Yeah. I mean,
I was in there too, but I was pretty well shook up.
It was crazy. It was cool. I remember it was hard not to grin, and at the same time, I felt bad. It was such a weird mixture. It's like, I'm screwing over my friends, but at the same time, this is going to be great. And it was, I don't know.
That, like, the whole, actually in the original storyline, like, I didn't have that in there. Kyle actually was the one who added the Lady Elowen betrayal. Like, he was the one who actually came up with that, and it ended up becoming, like, such a pinnacle in the whole storyline.
Yeah, it was.
Like, well, go ahead, Lloyd. I got some stuff.
Well, for him, it's almost like it's bottled up.
Yeah.
You got to uncork it.
Yeah, slowly.
It's all in there.
But,
Yeah.
that was really hard to watch. I started to have suspicions of Lady Elowen that event, and I wasn't sure about the Hands of Tethra, but Lady Elowen in specific, I started to have suspicions about. And just to give you an idea, we almost died how many times to recover that artifact? I mean,
Oh man, countless.
several. And
if those of you don't know, just before this, that same day, they fought the vampire.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you've all seen the movie, but it's on the Facebook page. But the vampire fight happened then, which was a very intense fight, and so if you want to see that part, watch that. But that was only a few hours before this scene.
So that's actually who they ended up finally retrieving the artifact from. But I mean, it was a long, painstaking process, even to get to that point.
They had to fight through a lot.
there was something actually really scary about it, because Hands of Tethra, and I felt a lot of fear of this, because Hands of Tethra was the number one good force that existed in the Merdania land. Outside of that, there was really nothing there that was a good force fighting for something.
You just had farmers.
So now we just found out the only good force fighting the land is actually probably the worst force of all of the land. So who's there? That's the moment that it was like transitioned from we're there for to we are now here as, and so that was actually a scary moment for that sense of it.
Yeah, well, for the most important part of that is it really did go, like you're saying, they were the Hands of Tethra. They were, and now that you found out that they've been infiltrated by the Shadow Coven, and the only ones good left have been killed and then replaced, are now what has happened is that goblet of Protectorate just passed from them to you guys.
Yeah.
And that whole transition, like Sir Roland's like, well, I was leading them, now I'm just trying to survive with these people, and it really went to the point of like, I watched everybody's face of like, now what do we do? And it wasn't now what are they going to do, it was now what do we do?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
it was huge, and like you said, you were getting suspicions. Like there was actually a big conversation after the vampire fight that Sir Roland and Ladd had, because Ladd was bringing his suspicions up about Lady Elowen, and Sir Roland was in the position of he started to see the corruption himself, but he was fooling himself because he believed so heavily in her, and he thought his faith in her was enough to keep her good. And he if he would have paid attention, he probably would have noticed the corruption, but he was so blinding himself because he wanted to see this pinnacle of glory, and he started talking to Ladd, and he almost got frustrated in a way of like, don't question her.
Yeah.
And he was actually arguing with himself, but Ladcroft was just trying to find that, that hope that he thought Sir Roland had when Sir Roland was trying to hang on to the hope himself.
Well, I think that really led to a deep relationship between a lot of player characters, and especially Ladcroft.
Yeah.
Between Sir Roland and Ladcroft was because out of any of the NPCs, who's the most trustworthy? Sir Roland. I mean, that guy's got, the most pure intentions, and he makes it quite obvious, And so the thing is he was right alongside them the whole time that this big betrayal happened. So it affected the player characters because they were also working alongside the Hands of Tethra to see these goals come through. But Sir Roland had actually, in the story, he had left his family, he had left his life to basically give his life in service to the Hands of Tethra to bring good to the land, to bring the light to the land. And so for him to have this huge thing happen to him, I think that was one thing the characters, or that really resonated with a lot of the characters, to where it's like, wow,
That to that point, Sir Roland's trustworthiness is I was not gonna hand over that artifact. I don't know if you remember this, but I had a lot of
there was
conversations. Should I hand them the artifact? So the trust I had in Sir Roland was the only reason I did, because I was thinking to myself, there's no way Sir Roland's bad. There's just no way. I know him too well. He's done too much. And that is the reason.
Yeah, and which, as you saw in the video, he's still the good guy.
And that's the only reason I handed that artifact over, because it was such. I even hid it. I hid it from like some of the players, even, because I'm like, I don't want anybody to know where this thing is.
Right.
We fought for it, but
yeah, it was definitely. I mean, even me in that moment playing him, I mean, I know what's about to happen, but when I'm standing there tied down and you guys are mocking me and going around me, I was actually getting working myself up to the point of anger. I almost hyperventilated. I actually got really dizzy at one point. I actually had to control my breathing because I was getting, so upset. And actually, at the moment when you see me walk into the scream, you see veins in my neck as I'm like just so intense, So, and me being staff, knowing what's happening, that emotional weight falling on the players is so much more
crazy.
Yeah,
definitely.
So then, what happened immediately after that point was, Lady Elowen used that artifact to bring about Lord Maxus, her master, bring about his undead army and unleash it upon the land of Merdania. So they were at the Iron Wolf Inn, which immediately around that whole area for miles and miles was infested by Lord Maxus' undead army. And so, why don't we go into that? November's event was essentially trying to... Actually, prior to that, was trying to find forces and develop ways to get in to break through the front lines of his undead army to try and strike at the heart of where he is. And then November's event was when you got there. You got back to the Iron Wolf Inn from the King's Lake area, and let's talk a little bit about that. I know it was a very different kind of event because of the whole scope of it, that you were, had one solid goal that you were driving after. What were your thoughts on the last event? How did you see it?
Well, for me, like I said, I got to come back as a player, and at that point, I was so elated to come back because I felt like I was coming back to finish what I started, and it was great to mix in with the restart our old primary and start building new ties with the new players, and then just that drive. Well, as I had to come back in, I brought my character back in wrecked, basically. I came in with Ghoul Fever, and I was really surprised by the community, actually. Not to get too far away from what we were talking about, but I came in with Ghoul Fever, and I was expecting the player to immediately nope, this guy, nope, and then it was not that. Totally, it took me for everyone's like, come on in. Your brother, come on. We're gonna go kick this guy's butt, and then we'll figure out what to do. And it was great. It was intense. It was an intense ride. It was an emotional ride. But
especially because you had to spend a couple weeks locked in a tavern with Bullby. So.
Oh yeah, RPing that was very good.
That was probably.
I'm done.
What's wrong with that? Bullby's great company.
But he's drunk.
Yeah.
in doses, in small doses, yeah. Bullby's all right.
We ran out of alcohol way too fast.
Yeah, coming to that event, I think one thing that we had going for us was we had such a strong, diversified group. At that point, Matthias has got a lot of our weapons better. Our crafter, Kildara, is and just Sarwin. Yeah. Everybody was knew their place in it, and everyone was really fighting as a group and trusted each other at that point, which was one thing we had going for us. Coming into that event, though. We just came off killing Lady Ellen, which was such a high for the group. I mean, because it was. I mean, you could looking at the Ellen fight, you could see the intensity
of
There was no doubt.
We
about
could.
There's no doubt.
And
about
we
it.
can feel it. We can feel the
yeah, physically.
Mariah Dory.
bruises.
Which really showed all the players being invested in the world and investing in each other's survival, and that was really helping go into the November event. But it was really, really, intense. It was really emotional. We get that stupid lantern, that glow-up lantern that tells us when the undead are near, right? Which we're thinking, this is such an awesome thing. We know when the undead are near.
And for those who don't know, it was actually an electronic candle that we changed. It had like 13 different colors. We had it purple, and with a remote control from far away, we could click it on, so it would just illuminate, when it was time.
It was a blessing, and we realized very quickly it was actually the worst curse of all. Because at first it was like, okay, great, we can just watch the candle when the undead are near. But as the night goes on, it actually, paranoia sunk in.
Yeah.
I remember sitting in the bed and like so tired, and I was supposed to be my shift, and I'm falling asleep, and I'm just like trying to look at the candle, and I'm like, is anybody else awake? No. And I'm like, if my eyes went away from it for 10 seconds, and I woke up, and paranoia would hit, and I'd look over and be like, how long has the candle been lit up, And
Yeah, you and I shared that. I mean, we were on the same shift, and you and I don't think our eyes, unless we passed out, were off that candle. We were just glued to it.
Yeah.
I remember, because I was like fighting that. It was like the worst thing ever. It's like, it's on!
Yeah. How long was I asleep? I don't know.
That was hilarious. I remember, coming up as staff, and we took night shifts as well as far as being staff. And that was a rough night. That was the roughest night that we've ever had as far as the Warriors of Light event evening. And it was just because of the situation that was going on. Constant encounters that were happening through the night. And I remember it was pretty great. Heather and I, we had the early shift, and we went up to the tavern to turn on the candle ahead of time before we actually got ready to come in as a combat encounter. And the first time we came up there, turned on the candle, I heard, listening inside the tavern, heard people's feet running around. Oh, it's on! Everybody just getting ready, getting geared up. Who's going out? And so it was just hilarious. And then the second time we came up there, nobody saw it when we turned on the candle. Turned it on, and I just listened for a little bit. And everybody was asleep. Nobody was looking at the candle, and so that led to a whole other scenario. But that was a wild dynamic.
Yeah, well, that was when you got to the door, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that, because I remember the door banging, and woke me up just enough where I grabbed the chair and slammed it right under the handle. I mean, literally just like, I don't know, instinct or what, just clunk. Yeah. And I'm like, alright, get up, we gotta gear up.
Well, there was a moment actually, like, and me and Mike had second shift, and we were up there, and there was actually a moment where we were getting ready to do a shade. I was going to come in as a shade, and we hit the candle. Mike hit the candle and came back to me. He said they're ready, and somebody goes out and came back from the bathroom, right, and left the cabin door wide open. And I'm a shade coming up the hill, and I'm like, oh, this is going to be bad. There's going to be a shade in the inn. What are these guys going to do? And I mean, in a way, I wish I could be on the other end of the shades, But as a shade, it's so funny to watch the fear that they produce.
Yeah, and speaking of the shades, I mean that whole event was based around a lot of spookiness.
Yeah,
right. Because the undead are pretty much one of the spookiest kinds of enemies you can face, and that was for the most part all the players were facing for that entire event. So actually, we got a video clip with some shades in it that is a whole lot of fun. So let's give it a watch. So what you just saw there was a group of shades that was approaching and trying to get into the inn while the players were pretty tired. They'd had a long, rough day, and so what you guys? I mean, how was that? It was
intense. There's no other word for it. It was intense. It was intense. It was terrifying. There's only a few of us that could even hurt them.
Yeah.
Oh, it was just
Air May.
Yeah, Air May and just our magic users. Only our magic users could hurt them. And it was just, it was rough. And then you crazy you, out there trying to draw them off. You were out there for what? 10, 20 minutes?
Oh, him and Brett, they were going back and forth, and
it was crazy. And Xylee almost brought him back because she was terrified for you, just trying to haul for you, and draws them all back. Oh my god!
Yeah, that was kind of our fault, though.
Yeah.
We didn't tell anybody what our plan was. It was just like we see shades come up. It's like we either got to get out of this inn now, or we're gonna be stuck here with shades for the night. Yeah. So it was like me and Gyros booked it out of the inn, and we're trying to draw them off, and you guys are calling them back by asking if we're okay, and it's like, they go back up to the inn, and it was...
I cannot tell you how much yelling I did, probably. They're like, get in, shut the door, leave the door shut, leave it shut, they'll come back, they'll knock, oh no.
But one thing that was intense being out there was they would get closer to Caleb if he'd make noise, Gyros. And I'd be like, I want to make noise, but I'm too scared. So but they're getting too close to him, so I'd be like, over here! And they'd start coming away, and I'd be like, Gyros, make some noise, man, they're getting close. So it was really intense where Gyros would say it just in time, and then they'd go back to him, and I'd be like, I don't want to do it. And he's got to be feeling the same way I am.
Oh, yeah, no doubt.
So I'd yell, and they'd get really close again, and
especially the three of them. It was almost too much. Yeah. It was crazy, because, I mean, it's pitch black.
The noise. I mean, you heard the video.
Oh, yeah,
the noise.
Well, it's pitch black, those eyes, those little whites that make the eyes. Your mind starts playing severe tricks. Oh my gosh. It's nuts.
A floating black thing.
Your mind makes the most terrible thing out of nothing. It's black and white. That's what it is. Why am I am terrified on my mind right now.
Yeah. And even though on the video,
5,000.
Yeah. And even though on the video you can't see a whole lot, you just see like a couple of, moving lights, and you hear the noises obviously. But yeah, like you're saying, your mind builds a whole lot. Because at one part, this wasn't at that event, but a previous event where a shade came up to the inn in the middle of the night, I got to be in the inn and see that from the player's perspective. And yes, it does. Because the eyes went like this, okay? Yeah, you're used to eyes looking like that, and then when the eyes do that,
oh god,
then you're like, and you're imagining these horrible things that are out there.
No. Does it have a back? Because because they were attached to my glasses, and I would take my glasses off, and then use my arms to extend, so I'd become like 8 foot tall, and then spin them, and I just hear everybody go, "What is? Oh my gosh!" Just this reaction.
In my mind, you were 10 feet tall.
Yeah,
you were 10 feet tall.
For a second there,
it was terrifying. It was true. It elicited true fear, and it was like you could feel it all the way down to the pit of your stomach. You're like, oh, I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to deal with that. Thank God they can't come in here. Don't open the door. Don't. It was bad.
Yeah, they're definitely something to be trifled with. And kudos to actually Gyros, because at the second shift when I was going to come into the inn, when that door was left open, I never actually got to get into the inn because Gyros goes, "You got to keep this door shut." And he looked out the door, and there I was, and he goes, boop, out the door, shut it. And I literally chased Gyros through the woods, man, it was a ways out there, and he just kept calling me, and eventually got to the point to where I couldn't find him, and he stopped moving, so I couldn't hear the leaves, and I'm just going around, where I last thought I heard him, and then I faded out, and man, he had to have been stressing it, because he's out there. You could even, usually way out there, you can see the light to the inn through the trees, especially, in the fall, but you couldn't see the inn anymore at all. And I thought I was lost for a second. I'm just in the woods and I don't know where I am.
That's awful.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's definitely a unique experience being the Shade as well, because you have to take on, sort of the embodiment of fear.
Yeah.
And even though I personally sounded like, with my squeal, sort of like a dying goat, this is the way it sounds to me in the videos, it was still a whole lot of fun.
Yeah. It definitely didn't sound like a dying goat to us.
No, honestly, I was actually thinking about that, because we all had a distinct sound, and I liked it. Like at the end, the diversity of it made it so much more creepy. Like Jenny's getting high pitched, that, and then my weird squeals, and then yours were like in that mid range, so it made it this really almost like this song of death and fear.
It had its own
was
heart
good.
rate to it. I'll give you that.
Yeah.
It was good.
It chilled the blood.
So the players overcame that, those different trials, and then also they overcame eventually Lord Maxus, who was, for lack of a better term, the ultimate enemy at that point. He was basically at the top of the pyramid as far as their concerns, and they eventually overcame him and defeated him. And shortly after that, we transitioned into, from a great celebration of, wow, we just reclaimed our homeland. This is our old stomping ground. This is where that original trio, started off at.
Goblins.
Yep.
Yeah, the whole gig.
And now we've brought it back to the way it was, or we're starting to.
Yeah.
So it was like an ultimate justification and vindication. And so then just after that, that's when the authority from what the Hands of Tethra had gets passed down to the players, and specifically Ladakroth and Gyros.
Yep.
And that was the event where your character is pretty much seeing his last as a player character, where you decided to retire him off of the that last event there in November, to where he got that document from Sir Roland, transferring that authority, and basically making himself into an exemplar at the end of this grand tale, this story arc that carried on for years, and then finally kind of the culmination of it is him making his way out and kind of entering into not retirement as much as he enters into legend and into a permanent part of the history of the world.
Yeah.
So, I mean, how did that make you feel? I mean, that's more than just a Saturday night movie you watch. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You guys lived it.
Well,
Yep.
to the point of Lord Maxus, first of all, the whole defeat of Lord Maxus, it was kind of like we had a choice there.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to face this great enemy with great power. But the question basically, it wasn't a question whether to fight him, because it's like we either stand here now and fight him and die,
Or lose everything.
or we don't fight at all
And
and
still
we
die.
still die.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Lose
so
everything.
I think Sir Roland said there's no shame, or maybe it was Warren who said there's no shame in staying back. And the entire group was like, we're doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And nobody stayed back, which
No.
really was like, it was wow.
Yeah,
I
that was-
wanted to. I was looking around like, nobody wants to stay
I honestly,
like,
I honestly, when I said that speech, I really thought that I was gonna, especially the newer players, I thought that they were gonna stay back. Because they're low level. I understand. I mean, a goblin's gonna wreck this person. You're going to fight Lord Maxus. Like, no one is cowardice who wishes to stay back. This is, that's honorable. We honor you, even though you wish not to fight, and
Not
not a
us.
single
No.
soul. And I honestly want to attribute that to who. Because of that camaraderie that came back of Ladakroth and Artum and Gyros, I really think at that moment you three were standing out there emotionally,
Yeah.
and that's why they in their hearts they couldn't sit down, because they're like this is the end, and we're going to be there for it regardless what happens.
Right. They had set that precedent
Yeah.
of, we're going to do this regardless if it claims us or not.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we have to do this thing. And then the other, newer characters kind of
Latched
saw
on,
that
yeah.
example, and they're like, almost like that's what I want to be when I grow up, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And they took that step too, putting their own lives on the line. It was definitely awesome.
It was definitely cool.
It was a long road to him too.
Yeah,
a very long road. I mean, the trek there, fighting all those undead. It
That
felt
was
like
really- that
it
was-
almost felt like the world was an Ermidania was ending in a way,
Yeah.
and it's like
Yeah.
it's like this is it, and it was actually in a way, instead of like fighting alongside groups, it was like we are the force here.
They're the strike
And the
force.
passion of our
Yeah.
group, though, really kept the group alive. Xylia's passion and her influence on the druids, huge.
Yeah.
Huge. And I love how that tied back in that fight, where the things we did along the way mattered.
Oh, yeah.
Dark elves. And,
Xylia helped us get that, get the druids alliance, and that helped us in the fight. The dark elves with
Cord's character.
Cord. His alliance with the dark elves, and that all that coming back together for that moment of like, it was like everything we did over the past years and years and years is coming to this moment. And everything that we did mattered, where it was like, does this matter? Does this matter? And the world tied back together to it does. Everything we did mattered. Our relationship with Sir Roland was huge. You know, Warren in that moment.
He could have got lynched against the tree. Like, literally, that option...
Dude, you were intense. Because Jenny and I were playing...
This is back to an earlier event when they seen Sir Roland again after the Lady Elowen incident. And Sir Roland was actually tied to a tree, and some villagers were blaming him pretty much for the betrayal and for all of that, and they had him tied to a tree.
Oh yeah, we're getting ready to lynch him, and here comes there was this group that kind of stalled us, but then as soon as Vlad was on the scene, it was just like, you touch him and we will kill you. And we were like, I was actually scared as an NPC. I thought he actually might do me real physical harm. I'm like,
you should be.
it was great because like Jenny are like, okay, I think it's time for us to leave. Like now, for real. Let's go back to NPC camp now. Run.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that could have whole went down differently, and yeah, you're right. You know that his relationship and the thing could have been a whole.
Tildara and the shield.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah, like you were getting into a minute ago, Warren was going to die right there.
Yeah.
That's a long-time character that didn't just exist in Warriors of Light. You know, he's existed for years in other facets, and he was going to die that night unless you guys did what you did to basically save him.
Yeah, that was a close one. That was a real close one.
Yeah.
It was definitely an intense evening, and an intense event all the way around, not just for the players but also for staff. You know, and that as a director, you know, and the other staff can share in this with me as far as worrying about are we taking our players too far? You know, like I think every staff member, including myself, I discussed it with everybody, like almost like, do we back off? And but we were like, no, because it's real, and if we do that, then it's not real. And you know, we might have somebody go, I can't take this, and I think we did have that moment. There was somebody that did have that moment.
I think all of us internally had that moment.
Yeah,
where it's like, this is so real.
But at the same time, you know, that's real life in a way. So to experience it here would be, you know, if you didn't have that moment, you wouldn't have a real experience. You know, because people deal with situations in life, and that's another thing you want to do is I don't want to just have a character. You know, I want to have a living, breathing thing. You know, you know, even though I wasn't a player character, Sir Roland's were living and breathing to me. So to have you guys as characters that were your character, not an NPC, and walk away with that, you can almost look back at that as like I always refer to it as like Total Recall, when he gets in the machine, and you know they're going to give him a vacation, you know, in a way, and he's like, you know, that I actually lived that, you know, that was real. And you know, you'll be an old person later in your life going, you know what, I might not have fought in real situation a lich, but emotionally, god darn it, I fought a lich. And I saved a world.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
and that's the ultimate goal, is to make the players be heroes.
Yeah, to get that sense of, you know, I accomplished something, or this character kind of vicariously, me living through them, accomplished this. And like you guys were saying about relationships, you know, you almost miss being that character so you can, you know, get back to that relationship of, you know, well, it's nice that, you know, we're sitting here talking, Matt, but I want to be Warren so I can talk to Artum. You know what I mean? Exactly. That kind of a thing where it's like these are almost different people that exist that you start to miss because they remained so real to you, and you made them so real to other people.
And it's not just that because it's like fun, but it's emotional.
Yeah.
Like emotionally, I have ties to all the characters that are real to me.
Well, it's a real life experience.
And I saved the world with them. You know, and so it's like,
right? Yeah, there's something there. Right?
Is you went somewhere and you did something with a group of people that you don't know, and you became brothers.
Right.
Exactly. You know, I'm not downplaying. I'm actually upplaying it. You know, because after a circumstance, emotionally, you went through something that made you family.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
And you walked away with it as you know, brothers. So like, you know, even in a circumstance like that, they call each other brothers. In a way, you can kind of get it, because it's like when you spend time with somebody and you have that emotional breakdown and you're there for each other through those moments, you become stinking family.
Yeah, you really do.
definitely. And there were a lot of things that happened, and a lot of things put to rest, bad guys included. But we've got a lot to look forward to. So kind of winding this thing down, we just wanted to kind of bring everyone a bit up to speed as far as like what we've been working on, our ideas for the future, because before the next event, we're going to have rewritten from the ground up the entire rule book down to every class, every power. Some things might stay around, but they've been rebalanced, reevaluated. But anyway, I just wanted to talk more about that. So previously what we had was 3 domains: the warrior, the mage, and the specialist. Well, now we still have those 3, but we also added 2 more. We actually turned crafter. We called the domain trades at this point. That's becoming a domain of its own. And then also we're adding an entirely new and original domain, which is called Spirit. And Spirit's going to have 3 primary classes within it. It's going to have the Druid, Shaman, and the Monk. So we're very excited for those classes to come out, because the mechanics of how they work and what they're doing is very different. Also, the amount of abilities and powers we're pouring into this next version of the rules is incredibly diverse, and we have an incredible amount of powers to select from. So how we're planning it and how we've designed it so far is, and I say that only because we haven't finished everything, is because before we had 18 powers in each class, we've bumped that up to 24 powers in each class.
With a side pool.
And what we mean by that is there was a rune side pool that was only really available to mages previously, and that only had 9 powers in it. Whereas now we're going to expand each class to have its own side pool that's only available to them. And this is a way to where it doesn't diminish multi-classing in any way, but what it does is it makes those mainline classes, like your healer, for example. You're not going to have a fighter that's ever going to be as good as a straight line life mage, right? It just makes sense. So what we're going to have is these side pools, which just make those classes even better for being designated straight to that class and playing it true. So there's a lot of fun things we've got in store. Also, like an entire racial revamp. So instead of just having your races being cut and dry, well, I chose elf, I chose dwarf, I chose this, we're planning on putting in sub-races is what we're going to be releasing. So sub-races within each one of those races. So if you're an elf, okay, you're an elf, but what are you? Are you a high elf? Are you a wood elf? Are you a dark elf? A lot of different things like that. What are some of your thoughts as far as what you're excited about?
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, we went for just the power selection. We went from around 170 to now like 470.
Yeah.
So the diversity of that, not only that to have a class, so you can now, since there's 24 powers in each class, once you hit level 10, you can only have a maximum of 20 powers. So that means 4 powers you weren't able to pick up for the fact that there's just so many options. And that's really good too, for the fact if you have 2 people that are like, I want to be just straight line scout, I don't want to take powers in anything else, which is totally optional and totally beneficial in the way we have it. But then you could have 2 scouts that are just exactly the same, but they have these couple powers and he has these couple powers, and they're not looking the same. And so that's one of the interesting things about it, is just the diversity and more ability to be what you want to be. And that's the cool thing. I'm super excited for even the RP of, like, you were saying with the spirit, the monk, the shaman and the druid are, they're in that thing, but just like, the spirit was so different, or I'm sorry, the specialist was so different from the warrior, and the warrior is so much different from the mage. And we were concerned about to make it its own thing, but it so fell into place. And it is so, I'm in the spirit domain, and it looks totally different than the specialist domain. And it's so flushed out that way. And, and there's a lot of RP elements to the classes. And another, like with knowledges are changing a little bit. So another thing we wanted to look at is people that aren't looking to be a combatant, like crafting's and getting a huge overhaul, but they're also going to be extremely effective in the world. not just at the end, but they can also do things out in the world too, in a sense of, people don't always want to just be a combatant, but they want to be useful. Yeah. So our crafting is really coming together, because that was a big area we wanted to work on. And just the design of it. So if you want to be that bookworm that has all these knowledges and things like that, because knowledges are no longer going to be inherent, you actually have to pick them up. So you could be that bookworm, and everybody's going to take you along. They'll be like, yeah, I have a bunch of combat, but I don't have any knowledge. But this guy has a ton of knowledges and no combat. You're coming on the mod, bro, because we don't know what we're looking at, because that's such an integral part.
So they could be that scholarly type of thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Also, we're putting in things like professions. So that way players, if you choose to be a crafter, you're going to be making money inherently, right? Because you're going to be making things and services that people can use. But then, as far as being an adventurer class, just a mainline adventurer, all you could do previously was just adventure to earn money, other than like stealing things or something like that, something that's kind of shady. But now, with the professions being added in, players who are adventurers could just pick up one profession ability and then be able to be lucrative in what they do and be able to provide an avenue so that the economy of the game can circulate between crafters, professions, adventurers. The whole thing circulates all the way around to merchants even.
Yeah.
So there are definitely a lot of improvements we're baking into this next big version.
Look forward to that.
Yeah. So I think that pretty much wraps it up.
There is one more thing. We were talking about that emotional immersion, and our LARP is very different from most other LARPs. In the sense of that, we wanna provide a realm that's not just a game, just to come and have a good time. I mean, that's what it is about having a good time. But we want a place to where you can actually experience that emotional connection. And if you want to just come and have fun doing combat, totally come on in. But I challenge you to jump into that emotional role and experience that like what these guys are talking about, and becoming that character and immersing yourself beyond just a game. And sometimes it's hard to do that, but once you do that, you walk away with something that you can't get anywhere else. And I can't even here tonight explain to you what that is, but it's a lifetime experience that doesn't leave you. It's better than any vacation. I tell you what, if I had an opportunity to go LARPing for 3 days or go on a 2-week vacation, I would pick a LARP for 3 days. Why? Because I'll forget about the beach and I'll want to go back to the beach again, but it's the beach. You go to a LARP, I'm never going to forget it. It's up here in the book forever.
Emotions.
And it's
true.
real. And I challenge anybody that comes to our LARP or already is to really sink yourself in, because I'm telling you what, once you get that out of it, there's no going back. And that's when the LARP addiction happens. Because it's like, man, I want to be there, man.
I'm not there.
Yeah, I challenge anybody.
All right. Well, thanks for watching this. We really appreciate it. We had a lot of fun getting together and talking about, one of our favorite pastimes or hobbies or whatever you want to call it. Seems a bit more than that. But anyway, so thanks for joining us. I hope maybe it answered some of your questions. I hope it gave you some more insights into what goes on. And it was just a great time. So thanks, everybody. We hope to see you next time.